Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
And once again, greetings to you, music lovers, thrill seekers, conversationalists all across the bountiful, fruited plain. It's the Rush Limbaugh program here on the EIB network. Great to have you here. The telephone number's always, if you want to be on the program later today, 800-282-2882, and the email address lrushbo@eibnet.us. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to beg your indulgence for a few moments here before we get to the news of the day, the special counsel, the daily tack that is occurring here as the establishment in Washington attempts to regain what it believes is rightfully theirs. One of my closest and dearest friends and colleagues passed away at 6 minutes after 8 o'clock this morning here in South Florida. Roger Ailes, 77 years old. Roger and I were passengers in history. I met Roger in around 1990, one night at dinner at the 21 Club in New York. And my life was never the same thereafter. There is, as we speak, and there has been for the past year, a barrage of slander and libel aimed at Roger Ailes by pissants who will never accomplish even 5% of what he did. These are people that did not know him, that prejudged him, that were jealous, people who were envious, and people who felt the need to take down a serious enemy who threatened what they consider to be their rightful hold on the media, on America, or what have you. Some of the things being said just today about Roger Ailes are absolutely untrue. Roger Ailes was not suicidal. Roger Ailes was not defeated. Roger Ailes was not destroyed. And Roger Ailes and his courageous and lovely wife, Beth, were not separated. These are things people wish that they had made happen. These are things that people wish they had caused. They wish they had destroyed Roger Ailes. They wish they had created marital strife. They wish they could have caused him to become suicidal. But he was not any of those things. I knew Roger Ailes. I've known Roger Ailes, as I say, from about 1990. And I could sit here and recount stories for you and give a eulogy of sorts, which I'm more than prepared to do. But I think the way I would rather do this, is to go back and replay some comments I made in a speech in honor of Roger back in 2009. It was in Tarrytown, New York. This was the Westchester Putnam Council of the Boy Scouts of America up in New York, and Roger was their annual award winner. And in addition to the roster of speakers, somebody from the Boy Scout Council reached out to me and asked if I would come up and make some remarks, and I was flattered and honored to do so. And I don't think we've ever played I'm not going to play the entire length of the remarks I made, but I'm going to play more than we have played in the past on the program here. Because what I would like for people to know is the Roger Ailes that I know, Roger Ailes that I knew, the brilliant, inspiring, motivating, compassionate, funny, the most naturally funny human being I have ever met. I've never encountered Roger Ailes in despair. Wouldn't allow himself to be. I've never been around him when he was fatalistic or even depressed. Quite the opposite. He had virtually every characteristic of great leadership, and he knew it, and he was aware of it, and he used it as best he could to try to get the best out of everybody that worked for him and worked with him. You'll read all the things about how he got started on the Mike Douglas show, essentially in the mailroom, ended up producing the program. You'll read about the stories of him taking over the campaign successfully of Richard Nixon and George Bush. And I have my own stories of Roger Ailes and American presidential politics, such as it's 1992. The first year of the Rush Limbaugh television show that Roger Ailes executive produced for 4 years. The television show had not yet begun, slated for fall production. That would have been in September. This happened to be in June. So I get a call. Roger says, hey, we're going to Washington, pack a bag, we're staying overnight. And I said, what's going on? He said, we're going to White House. What? Yeah, we're going to White House. President wants to talk to you. What? President Bush wants to talk to you. Pack a bag and meet me so-and-so. So we flew to Washington. We were to have dinner at the White House with President and Mrs. Bush. When we arrived early on purpose, and we went to the Old Ebbitt Grill, which is a restaurant just across the street from the White House. I said, what are we doing here? We're having dinner over there. He said, no, we're not. They don't eat. They eat like birds. If you want dinner tonight, we're going to eat here, and then we're going to go over there to dinner. That's what we did. We had dinner at the Old Ebbitt Grill, chowed down, went over to the White House, and he was right. President and Mrs. Bush ate very sparingly. In fact, they served finger bowls after dinner for wash your hands. And I looked at it. I was kind of perplexed, and I didn't quite know what to do. Mrs. Bush looked at me with wide eyes, afraid that I was going to think it was soup. She was looking at me like, please don't. I could just see it in her eyes. So I sort of faked picking up a spoon and make it, no, it's a finger bowl. I said, I knew. I'm just lightening things up. After dinner, we piled in a limousine. We went over to the Kennedy Center, where the president attended a performance of something or other. When the president arrived, everything is stopped, and he's introduced. So was I. I'm so embarrassed I can't begin to tell you. Roger is off outside the spotlight. Roger's nowhere to be seen. He's there. He's in the same row, but he's off out of spotlight. The crowd's looking up. Same opinion I had. What am I doing there? We go backstage, meet the cast and the crew of the production, head back to the White House after it's over in the presidential limousine and discuss the presidential campaign of 1992. It was really at the peak moment of Perot. Slept that night in the Lincoln bedroom. Ailes slept across the hall in the Queen's bedroom. I got a total history lesson of the White House, the residence, the Lincoln bedroom, such as was never his bedroom. It was always his office. In the Second World War, there was no West Wing. Lincoln never slept in this room, but they carry forward a tradition. They call it the Lincoln bedroom, but it's only a bedroom for guests now. I didn't go to bed that night. I didn't want to lose consciousness while there. So we left the next morning, hopped a plane, up shuttle back up to New York, did the radio show, talked about it. Roger Ailes made that happen. Roger was able to open doors for people and willingly and happily did so. And it was never for his benefit. Not directly. It was always in furtherment of a cause or helping somebody else. But what I want to play for you, and I've got countless stories like that I could share with you, but I think I'd rather play for you a portion of the tribute that I delivered back on the 11th of November of 2009. This is shortly after Obama has just been elected, by the way. And it's, again, the Westchester Putnam Council of the Boy Scouts of America, Roger Ailes, the 2009 Good Scout Award ceremony. Here's a portion of what I said.
One man has established a culture for 1,700 people who believe in it, who follow it, who execute it. Roger Ailes cannot do everything. Roger Ailes is not on the air. Roger Ailes does not ever show up on camera. And yet, everybody who does is a reflection of him. He has the ability to inspire, to motivate, to enthuse. People around Roger Ailes are not negative. If they are, he sends out a memo. The memo says, negative people make healthy people sick. Personal story. We all grow up wanting to be loved. None of us are raised to be hated. And yet, and I was the same way. I mean, many of us will alter our own personalities to be accepted by people. We'll try to figure out what people want us to be and then be that so that we'll be liked. In the process of doing that, we deny who we really are. Now, when I was growing up, nobody hated me, and nobody thought that I hated anybody else. Had personality conflicts with people, disagreements. Nobody thought I hated anybody, and nobody hated me. 6 months after my national radio show started, 20% of the country hated me just because of my values, just because of my conservatism. And I didn't know how to deal with this. And I was looking for advice from anybody who could tell me how to respond to all this baseless criticism of mine. And people said, well, you can't let it stand. You've got to respond to it. You can't let that store. And if I responded to it, the critics thought they'd hit a home run and just mounted even more criticism because I had reacted to it. Other people said, you got to ignore it. All you do by responding to it is elevate it. More people hear about it than otherwise would have. This went on for 3 years. I had to learn, which was a tough psychological thing for me, I had to learn how to take being hated as a measure of success. Nobody's raised for that. And the person that taught me to deal with this and to remain psychologically healthy was Roger Ailes. And had that not happened, I wouldn't be anywhere near where I am tonight.
And I don't say that, and I didn't say that lightly. It was a really confusing time. As I say, I had not been hated or didn't hate anybody, but simply because I was on the radio now and effectively espoused conservatism, that automatically made me, all the isms, racism, sexism, bigot, homophobic. And it's a tough thing to have to turn to being hated and convert that into a measure of success, because we're not raised that way. Nobody is. Nobody's raised to want to be hated. Quite the opposite. And to take being hated as a measure of success, it's a psychological challenge. And it was Roger Ailes that gave me advice and lessons he had learned himself, but basically how just to overcome all of that with confidence, self-esteem, and recognize the people saying it don't know what they're talking about and don't know you. The people who do know you know who you are. That's all you can do, and that's all that matters. Seek your happiness from the people that love you, and you love them, because you're never going to be loved by people that never know you. And it was much more detailed and involved in that, but it was extremely, essentially helpful. Here's the next little segment from the...
My relationship with Roger has been deeply personal in a friendship level and a professional level that I've never experienced with anybody else that I've worked for or worked with. And even though Roger has had nothing to do with my radio show, he was the exec producer of my TV show for 4 years, the things I've learned from him about being a man, about the country, about how to be a professional, nobody else taught me. Nobody else was capable of teaching me. It was a crapshoot whether I would have learned it on my own, but maybe I would have, but I didn't have to, because I had Roger behind me telling me how to react, how to be. I remember one night on our TV show, I was just, for some reason, I said, I can't do it, Roger. I can't do it. This is not me. I can't do it. Of course you can. What do you mean you can't do it? Nobody says you can. Who, you're Rush Limbaugh. You can't do it? Sent me out, and I did it. A lot of people would have said, yeah, you can't do it. Oh, you can't do it? You don't want to do it? Okay, well, maybe we'll cancel tonight's show and we'll... But Roger does not tolerate or accept failure in people, nor does he accept people feeling secondary. He is a genuine human being who is able to bring out the absolute best in everyone who works for him and works with him. And I have never met anybody in my life who is able to do that.
And especially in a large organization like Fox News, that at this time in 2009, 1,700 people. Stop and think about it, folks. Think about establishing a culture that no matter when you tune in to Fox News as a consumer, as an audience member, with expectations that you're going to get what you expect from a man who's never on camera, who's not writing scripts, who's not on the phone with producers and demanding this or that, hiring the right people, vetting the right people, inspiring them and motivating, and turning them loose. Not many people can do it. Roger Ailes has accomplished things in life that few people will ever even attempt. And it's one of the reasons why there's so many people who are jealous, so many people who are envious, and so many people who want to knock all of this down and characterize it as something other than what it is. And what it is, what it was greatness. There's more. I appreciate your indulging me in this just a little bit more. We'll take a break and come back in just a second. Don't go away. At the time of the Scout dinner in New York, Roger's son, Zach, was 9. He was in the audience that night.
Zach, I want you to come up here for just a second. This is Roger's son, Zach. You've heard him addressed here tonight. Now, you've heard a lot of things about your dad tonight. How old are you?
9.
You're 9 years old. You've heard a lot of things about your dad tonight, and you've heard them described in flowery terms. I want to make it real simple for you. Your father's a great man. Your father is one of the greatest Americans who's ever lived, and I don't want you to ever forget that. I don't want you to understand exactly what that means. And I mean great, Zach. Your father loves you. You can't believe the stories and how proud he's been talking to me about you and the things that he was looking forward to being able to do with you and has been able to do. So I wanted you to know it from me personally. You've heard all the flowery language. Your father is a great man. You'll know that for the rest of your life.
Thank you.
And this is often said as a cliche. In Roger's case, it's true. He is a great man, but his greatness has been enhanced and expanded because of Beth and their relationship. Well, Beth understands who Roger is and lets Roger be Roger. I have never had that experience. But it really is a treasure. I thank the Lord for all the people I've met. I thank the Lord for people here doing the Lord's work in the Boy Scouts and promoting American values. And I'm one of the luckiest people in the world. I wish everybody could know the Roger Ailes I know and be personally impacted by his knowledge, his advice, his attitude, his optimism, his enthusiasm, his sense of humor. Because when Roger Ailes is on your team, you do not lose. Zach, congratulations.
And it's true. Roger was honored one year by the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation and let me speak for 5 minutes that night. And I closed with the same point. When Roger Ailes is on your team, you didn't lose. America needs many more like Roger Ailes, not less. So it looks like 13 people have been injured, being treated for injuries after a car has plowed into pedestrians in Times Square in New York. Governor Cuomo, the son of Mario de Pius, is now headed to the scene. It apparently just happened in the past couple of minutes here. And as it unfolds, we will have details for you. As I say, we're going to get to everything that we would have gotten to today in not too much longer. I just have a couple more things here that I want to share with you on this, the day that Roger Ailes passed away at age 77. When I had finished speaking, I think there was one more speaker, and then Roger got up, and I just want you to hear a little bit of Roger Ailes himself as he was that night. Roger was not on camera. People did not. This is one of the great sadnesses for me, is that he was one of the most naturally funny. It reminded my dad in a way when we'd go to dinner and a bunch of us, everybody would want to go if they found out Roger was going to be there. It was just an education. It was an interactive education to sit there and listen to whatever was being discussed. It was going to be entertaining and funny and informative and enlightening. There just aren't enough people like him. And in recent years, there hasn't been a lot of Roger in public. He's always been a behind-the-scenes person. It's amazing. His job has been to make others larger than life on television. His job is to secure victory for other people, and he did it over and over. He was the man that revived Richard Nixon's career. I don't know how many of you remember, it was 1968, and I don't remember why I happened to be watching television. My memory tells me it was a Saturday night, and Richard Nixon was doing a town hall in the round. It was just Nixon and a bunch of voters, big group of people. I remember watching it and concluding, I've never seen, now I'm 17 years old, but I'm advanced for my years in terms of political awareness. I've never seen Richard Nixon so likable. I'd never seen him so engaging. I'd never seen people so interested in what Nixon had to say. That was all Roger Ailes, who had arranged that night, put it together, structured it, and advised Nixon on the circular format, set, and taking open-ended questions with no script. If Roger trusted you, that in itself, I mean to perform, if he trusted you to send you out, that itself was a vote of confidence that was worth as much as you'd get from anybody else. So here's a little of Roger, responding to the award that he was given on November 11, 2009 by the Westchester Putnam Council of the Boy Scouts of America.
He flew up all the way to do that. He was a Boy Scout, but they had a Girl Scout camp across the lake. So they chained Rush to the cot at night, and he said it took him 20 minutes longer to swim with that thing hanging off of him. What's little known about Rush are the things he does for charity with absolutely no fanfare. The other thing is that he creates 15 hours a week of original material because he has talent, he has a sense of humor, and he's risen to the highest places in radio because he has a brilliant mind. And so people who don't know Rush don't understand that about him. What he does is hard work, and he's able to go out there every day and win, and that's very hard to do. So Rush, thank you.
Here's a little more from the. I told Cookie to cut the applause there, but she's biased toward me, so she kept it in. But here's
we have Republicans and Democrats here, as you know, and there's a tremendous difference between the two. Geraldo. There is a difference. There's a story about a guy who was in a balloon. He lived in the country, one of those air balloons, a hot air balloon. Stop that for just a second and cue that back up to the top. When Roger started, we have Republicans and Democrats here, as you know, and there's a tremendous difference between the two. I shouted, "Where are the Democrats?" I'm looking around the room, and that's when Roger said, "Geraldo." I don't know if you could hear me. You could? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear me. So if I think I couldn't, okay, here it is from the top once again. We have Republicans and Democrats here, as you know, and there's a tremendous difference between the two. Geraldo. There is a difference. There's a story about a guy who was in a balloon, one of those air balloons, a hot air balloon. He was lost, and he lowered the altitude, spotted a man down below, and descended a bit more. And then called out to him, and he said, "Excuse me, can you help me? I promised a friend I'd meet him an hour ago, and I don't know where I am." The man on the ground consulted his GPS and replied, "You're in a hot air balloon approximately 30 feet above ground elevation at 2,346 feet above sea level. You are 31 degrees, 14 minutes north latitude, 100 degrees, 49 minutes, west longitude. And the guy said, "You must be a Republican." And he said, "I am." "How did you know that?" He said, "Well, everything you told me is technically correct, but I have no idea what to make of your information. The fact is I'm still lost, and frankly, you haven't been very much help so far." And the other guy said, "You must be a Democrat." He said, "I am. How'd you know that?" He said, "Well, you don't know where you're going or where you've been. You've risen to where you are in hot air. You made a promise which you have no idea how to keep. You expect me to solve your problem. The fact is you're in the same place you were before we met, and now it's my fault."
And this is it. This is the final one. This is about a minute and a half here. Roger Ailes and America.
We live in a country where we believe individuals are innocent until proven guilty. I believe we owe that same courtesy to our country. This country is only 230 years old. It's small, it's young, it needs protection. Who better to protect it than the people who enjoy the freedoms it provides, and that's us. Of course, things can be criticized. Things could be better. Things could be improved. But in the end, the United States of America has fed more and freed more people on earth than all of the other countries put together. When they tear down your country, be sure to point out that we have a heroic history with traditional values and institutions like scouting, which have been a steady beacon of light in the universe. American exceptionalism does exist because we believe in freedom. Remember one thing about America. Everybody's trying to get in and nobody's trying to get out. Don't back off on traditional values. It's important to show respect and tolerance for others, but they must show the same respect for your values. Tolerance is a two-way street. Don't be afraid of challenges. Much of your success will come from taking on difficult situations.
Roger Ailes passed away today at 6 minutes after 8, 77 years of age. He was born in Ohio, and first time I heard this story, I was shocked and surprised because I didn't grow up knowing anybody like this. But he told me that 6 months before he was to turn 18, his father came to him and said, "So where are you going to go?" And Roger said, "What do you mean?" "Well, you're going to be 18 in 6 months. You can't stay here. When you're 18, I've done my job. So where are you going to go?" So he was basically told by his own father at 18, "You're on your own, pal. You're not going to stay under my roof." He had a hard scrabble upbringing, and he was a tough as nails individual and tough as nails competitor. And I could tell you stories about battles we had with media during the 4 years of the Rush Limbaugh, the television show, and maybe I will someday as things unfold. But for now, I just wanted to do what little I could to help a proper remembrance of a great American who has done more for his country and his family than he is likely to be acknowledged and given credit for, precisely because of the overwhelming and profound success he represented and constituted an ongoing threat, which is, I can't tell you how frustrating it is to even acknowledge such a thing exists in our country. I understand in totalitarian regimes where certain points of view or opinions make you enemy of the state, subject to imprisonment or constant ridicule, lose your job or whatever. But it's still, even though I know it happens, and even though I know it's out there, and even though I see it and have experienced it, it still boggles my mind that that kind of bigotry and prejudice that is rooted in tyranny exists in our own country. That simply an opposing point of view and succeeding at spreading it and implementing it, when it is rooted in individual liberty and freedom, can make you an enemy of the state. Scary times. and we've lost a great warrior in the battle, in the war. We'll be back. Don't go away. And we're back. El Rushball behind the golden EIB microphone. The news of the day, the independent, not the special counsel. Not the independent investigator, not the special investigator, not the independent prosecutor, not the special prosecutor. The special counsel. And it's a guy named Robert Mueller, who's run the FBI. He's done everything. He's the epitome of an establishment guy who happens to be approved of and highly rated by everybody involved. I understand the Trump White House was only given a 30-minute heads up yesterday that the Department of Justice was going to go the special counsel route. Now, one of the things guiding this on the Russia collusion side, we've been at this for over a year, or coming up in at least a year. No, it's over a year because Obama was talking about this March and April of 2016. So it's over a year. It really intensified after the election with the Clinton campaign. By the way, speaking of Hillary Clinton, can you imagine what a victory this must feel like for the Clintons? She single-handedly, the Clinton campaign single-handedly invented this vast Russian conspiracy 24 hours after the election. We know from this book entitled, what is it, Surrendered, Succumbed? I can never remember the title of this, but it's about Hillary's campaign, why it was so bad, why they lost, bunch of infighting and so forth. And we learned from this book at 24 hours after the election, the Clinton campaign decided to blame their defeat on the Russians colluding with Trump to affect the outcome of the election. And that allegation ends up being taken so seriously by so many supposedly rational people that now even so-called Republicans are talking about impeaching Trump. And I, of course, predicted this back on November 22nd of last year. Hillary never had this kind of success with her invention of the vast right-wing conspiracy. She tried, but that bombed out compared to this. Back then, it was her husband that ended up being impeached despite her conspiracy theory, but sadly now the chance of lock her up are just a distant, bitter memory, and the Trump administration is in the crosshairs. And I think some of the thinking here, now I'm just wild guessing and supposing here. This thing has been going on for so long and there's no evidence that at some point we're going to have to get a conclusion on this. And we're going to have to get a conclusion from somebody that everybody accepts as credible. And that's who this Mueller guy is. Well, I shouldn't call him this Mueller guy because he's not unknown. It's Robert Mueller. And he's worked for both parties. He's held positions in both party administrations. He's a former FBI director. He's been at this level for a long time, done it all. Reputation being a straight shooter, nonpartisan, independent, can't be led by the nose down one path or another. And if, absent the Flynn side of this, I mean, this investigation's got a year's worth of investigating already done. So Mueller, all he's got to do is take a look at that. We could theoretically be talking about this being wrapped up in months. But somehow I don't think that's the objective of some people who want the special counsel. I think, for example, the Democrats want it to go on interminably. And there will be continued leaks from the deep state while the investigation's going on that the media will claim, hey, we need to add this to the investigation. We need to throw this in the hopper. The idea is not to get to a conclusion if the Democrats and the media have their way. Now, arguing against, other than common sense, arguing against a relatively quick conclusion here is that this investigation will include whatever has been done or not done by Michael Flynn. And if the special counsel decides that there need to be indictments, well, then you can forget about a quick wrap-up to anything. If there are indictments, subpoenas, investigations, if there's going to be trials, then you can throw rapidity out the window. Now, I made mention of something on the program yesterday that James Comey seems to be in great conflict here with the revelation of his memo that the media has turned into this special counsel. The memo that he has after his dinner with Trump, where Trump supposedly told him to put it on hold or to wrap it up or whatever the terminology was. Comey's on record as testifying, this happened on May 3rd, that there was never any attempt by anybody to impede, to stop, to interrupt, to shape or flavor this investigation in any way, shape, manner, or form. So that sets the table for what's coming. There's all kinds of stuff in the stack of stuff today, and I'm determined to get to as much of it as I can, plus introducing your phone calls into the mix. Let's take another brief, obscene profit break and be back and continue in mere moments. Yeah, it was on the 3rd of May that James Comey, then the FBI director, testified under oath that the Trump administration had not pressured his agency to halt any investigation for political purposes. Yet Comey's got this memo out there that the New York Times just accepts and has made an entire narrative and news cycle out of. And the premise of the memo is that Trump asked Comey to shut it down. There's nothing here there, let it go or whatever. And yet Comey himself had testified that there had never been any pressure on him or the FBI from anybody in the administration. And that's all the way back on May 3rd. So that Trump doesn't obstruct investigations and had not ever tried to do so. It's amazing the web of deceit that has been woven here. The views expressed by the host on this program make more sense than anything anybody else out there happens to be saying because they are rooted in a daily and relentless, unstoppable pursuit of the truth. It is great to be with you. The telephone number, if you want to be on the program today, 800-282-2882, and the email address lrushbo@eibnet.us. Okay, Fox News is now reporting that the vehicle that rammed a bunch of civilians in Times Square was trying to enter a pedestrian area, which is why it's sitting at an up angle there on a metal or concrete barricade or bar of some kind. It's the kind of thing supposed to block vehicles from getting down a street. The car was going the wrong way. It's reported that the fire department has confirmed 1 death, 12 other people injured. And none of this is official. I'm just from the photos that I've been able to see here during the break. The driver is a youngish-looking person of color, but the New York PD is not saying that. They're not talking yet. Wall Street Journal 4 minutes ago, 1 person dead. Times Square crash. Driver identified as a 26-year-old from the Bronx with previous DWI arrests. So the information keeps pouring in. Everybody's going to look, is this an act of terrorism? Is it an act of terrorism? And it doesn't look like that now. Nobody's talking what? No, nobody claims they've heard Allahu Akbar, or is that what you're asking me? Yeah, nobody claims that they've heard that. Okay, let's now head to the special counsel. I don't know what your reaction to this was. I was kind of surprised. It caught me off guard. These last couple of days or 3 days, folks, have been hectic and distracting for me. But when I heard this yesterday afternoon, I thought, what the hell happened? Who did this? I mean, the only people clamoring for this are the Democrats. I said, what the hell? I mean, my initial reaction, why did the Democrats get what they wanted? Every damn one of these things. And then I had to stop and catch myself. It's not just the Democrats. This is the Washington establishment. This is exactly what this is. And as I looked at it, digested more, I started reading this universal love and admiration for Robert Mueller. And I sort of said, everybody's happy with this. This is the most acceptable outcome there could have been. There couldn't have been a better choice. There couldn't have been anybody better to look into this. Because the result, whatever he's going to come up with, is going to be universally accepted. Okay, you really want to tell me, you want me to believe that if, and I'm not even sure we're ever going to get this, but if there is an exoneration of Trump and collusion with the Russians to affect the outcome of the election, you think that's going to make the Democrats go away? Do you think that's going to make the deep state shut down? Is that going to stop people in the intelligence community trying to overthrow an elected president? Because that is what is going on here. I don't care what you want to call it. You can call it the deep state. You can get specific and you can say that it's members of the permanent government, and there are plenty of those, that are in the intelligence community that simply will not accept the results of the election. That all of the Democrat Party is made up of people like that. And that they are all unified in literally overturning that election and either getting rid of Trump or rendering him so powerless that he has no choice but then to resign. And the Republicans are running around, they're starting to whisper President Pence. And the word impeachment is being bandied about. And it's too late to go back and ask, okay, what could the administration, what could Trump have done to have prevented us from arriving at this point? But it is a shocking display. It's a sobering display of the power of the Washington establishment that with innuendo, fake news, and totally made up news that we can create enough criminal suspicion to justify yet another investigation into all of this. There are countless investigations that have been ongoing for a year already, and none of them have found any evidence. And yet none of that is relevant. None of that seems to matter. Now we have to go all in on the special counsel. And it is clear to anybody who wants to honestly admit what's happening here, and that is that call it what you want, the establishment is doing everything it can to overturn a duly elected presidency and president. And their allies, of course, are those in the media. Without the media, none of this would be possible. So the media is feeling its oats today, and Dan Rather's out there saying, God bless the media. Thank God for the media. We all owe the media. And, of course, from their perspective, they do. The most recent flashpoint, the most recent sign of guilt is a leak to the New York Times from somebody who's unknown that James Comey kept memos of every dinner and meeting with Donald Trump, and he memorialized those meetings in those memos for the express purpose of establishing a timeline and a narrative and his own version of events, should there ever be any investigation into those meetings and dinners. And in one of those meetings, one of those dinners, it was, of course, stated, alleged in the memo, that Trump asked Comey to basically set it aside, to end it. I forget the exact term that was used here, but it was not a demand. It was nothing more than a. So I hope you can see clear to letting this go. Much like a psychiatrist says to a person who's obsessive compulsive, I hope you can just let this go. And that is being amplified now into Trump obstructing justice and trying to shut down the investigation. So let me repeat something that I got into a little bit yesterday on the program. On May 3rd, the FBI Director, James Comey, under oath, testified that he had not experienced any attempts to stop the FBI from doing any investigation. This week, an unknown, unidentified person called a New York Times reporter and read to him a memo that supposedly Comey had written after a meeting with Trump back on Valentine's Day, where Trump hoped that the Flynn matter would not proceed further. 3 weeks after the FBI had cleared Flynn. Now, I know you might have heard me say some of this yesterday, and I did, but it needs to be repeated. The FBI had cleared Flynn of any malfeasance in the phone calls that they had surveilled that Flynn had had with the Russian ambassador. Flynn had been cleared on those. There were other things, whether or not he accepted money for a speech illegally, and this focus on the Logan Act, which has never been prosecuted. But in terms of the phone call where the Russian ambassador was being surveilled with the NSA, maybe the FBI, they desperately wanted to be able to say that Flynn had promised a quid pro quo, that he had promised the Russian ambassador that when Trump took the oath of office that they would end the sanctions that Obama placed on the Russians, and they welcomed back the 35 diplomats that Obama had kicked out of the country. None of that happened. The FBI cleared Flynn in that phone call. 3 weeks later, Trump and Comey have dinner in the White House, and somebody calls the New York Times and says that it's in Comey's memo that Trump said he hoped that the Flynn matter would not proceed further, would just see clear to let it go. What was there to let go? After that, Comey didn't tell anybody about this. We're led to believe that the president attempted to obstruct justice or interfere in the election or in the investigation, and Comey said not a word. which he's legally obligated to do. If somebody in the regime steps up and tries to interfere in your investigation, that's obstruction of justice. You have a duty to report that to the DOJ. You don't sit on that. But Comey didn't report it to anybody. Nobody knew about it till this anonymous source calls the New York Times and reads to them the context of the Comey, or the text of the Comey memo. And so this became a frenzy, a drive-by frenzy. They have driven around in circles for 24 hours straight, stirring up dust so thick that nobody can see past their noses. The Democrats are screaming the impeachment word. They're crashing the market. And scared to death Republicans are getting pulled into all this and asking themselves, is it worth defending Trump? Oh, my God, we don't want any of this. Oh, we hope they don't. And so it's all crashing in on everything. That's pretty much it. If you want more detail, from GotNews.com, former FBI Director James Comey testified under Senate oath on May 3rd that the Trump administration had not pressured his agency to halt any investigation for political purposes. Comey admitted that the FBI had always been free to operate without political interference from Trump, which flies in the face of the Democrats and their never-ending allegations about Russia and Trump. Comey said under Senate oath he had never been pressured to halt any investigation, that the FBI has always been free to operate without any White House political interference. So this is just it's a political witch hunt. Trump is right about that. It's a political witch hunt by enemies within the permanent government. Many of them are in the intelligence community, but they're everywhere. They're at the Justice Department. They're at the Pentagon. As we've discussed, they're in the deep state. They're all over the place. So on Wednesday, Rosenstein, number 2 at the DOJ, because Jeff Sessions has mistakenly recused himself from all this, Rosenstein appointed a special counsel, former FBI Director Robert Mueller, to drum up more hype about Trump's imaginary collusion with Russia during the general election. On May 9th, Trump fired Comey, who essentially has spent 15 years shilling for the Clintons. So the point is that on May the 8th, or May the 3rd, Comey testified. Look, how many times do I have to say this? That's what. It's so frustrating. You have to say it over and over again. Why doesn't anybody hear this? There's nothing here. There's not a shred here. There's no evidence whatsoever to even warrant this investigation. The only reason for the investigation is what the Democrats always rely on. Of course we have no evidence. It's the seriousness of the charge that requires us to get to the bottom of it. You know, the cover of the current issue of the Limbaugh, well, it's an upcoming issue, the next issue, a Limbaugh letter. Why do the losers keep winning? Which is right where, why do the losers keep winning? Why does it look like the losers are running the show? Well, that's because of who the losers are. And what it really boils down to is that you, the American people, the voters, you're way down the chain in terms of things and people that matter, as are elections. And we'll be back. Don't go away. Now, the Comey testimony was under questioning by a senator from Hawaii by the name of Mazie Hirono, or Hirano. I'm not sure how she pronounces it. It was. Look, you realize this memo is why we have a special counsel? The reason I'm harping on this, when you boil everything down, this imaginary memo, well, it may not be imaginary, but the New York Times has not seen it. Somebody just called him, somebody anonymous. Hey, I've got a memo from Comey. You want to hear some of it? Yeah, what's it say? Well, I had dinner with Trump, and Trump said, can't you just see your way to letting it go? Bambo, write a story, Trump interferes. But you go to Comey testimony twice. Most recently on May the 3rd, no evidence ever to suggest that he was interfered with. The president never once asked him to stop, the president's never interfered in the investigation. He said this under oath. Comey never made that memo public. One memo. Fake news, essentially undocumented. It's anonymously sourced. The memo's not even ever been seen. It was read to them. And this has caused everybody to panic. What might be is causing everybody to panic, but what everybody knows that contradicts what might be is being ignored. Okay, we start on the phones. People have been patiently waiting. We go to Kernersville, North Carolina to start. This is Nick. Great to have you, Nick. How are you doing, sir?
Good, Rush. How are you?
Fine, dandy.
And caller with talent on loan from God, dittos to you. And I want to come out and say I want to offer my condolences to you on losing a friend in Mr. Ailes. And I wanted to see if, in order to honor his memory, I was curious if you could expand a little bit more on specifically how he taught you to view the vast amount of criticism directed towards you as a measure of your success. It just seems so relevant in our political climate today.
Yeah, it is. So you want to know what it was he told me? I'm just making sure I understand your call. What?
Or if there's a story or what it was he told you. Just I just wanted to see if you would expand on that. You had mentioned it, and
let me give you a little context for it. The radio starts in August. The show starts in August of 1988, and it didn't take 6 months. And in markets all over the country where the show is heard, all of a sudden I'm espousing hate and racism and bigotry and homophobia and all these other things. And this stuff is being used to harm my efforts to get my radio show on other radio stations. We're trying to grow the EIB network, and we're not at this point in the top 10 markets. And eventually you have to be in top 10 markets if you're going to have commercial and financial success, unless you're going to ask for donors like the Democrats do, which we were never even entered our minds to go the fundraising route. So we had to get ourselves cleared on these stations. And as these stories mounted that I was this, that, and the other thing, it immediately pushed you on the defensive. And then I started getting advice. And one person was, you can't let that charge of racism stand. You can't. If you don't bat that down, that's going to stick, and you're going to be forever damaged. You've got to reply to it. So I said, that advice sounds good. So I responded to it, and it didn't help at all. At the moment I did it, I felt triumphant. But then when I saw the reaction to the critics, they loved it. They thought that it had gotten my attention. Why, here's this big radio host, and he's paying attention. Us and this little Marcy. They accused me or reveled in me punching down. So they thought, A, this guy can be distracted. B, he can be taken off his game, and he can be put on the defensive. The worst thing you can do is to be placed on the defensive trying to justify yourself. There's no win because you're acknowledging the allegation. You're acknowledging the claim by making it appear that it might be true, and so you have to bat it down. So the way to deal with this has to be in other ways. So some people came along and said, just ignore it. It'll go away if you ignore it, and you're not going to give the critics any satisfaction that they got to you. And that carried a little bit more weight with me. But the psychological advice was basically just giving me tools here and there to ignore it and not let it actually affect my own opinion of myself and affect my self-worth. In other words, not to let other people define me. And this goes for anybody. Most people end up being defined by others because they're obsessed with what people think of them. And the best thing, it didn't happen overnight. It took a while, but I've arrived at the point I don't care what people think. I'm lucky. I've got a microphone here every day where I can prove who I really am, each and every day. And that allows me to end the day feeling very satisfied with my efforts. A lot of people don't have that, which is unfortunate. Sticking with the phones here on the EIB network, this is Tom in Morris County, New Jersey. Tom, I'm glad you waited. I really am. Welcome to the EIB network. Hi.
Hi, Rush. Rush, two things. First of all, when President Trump addressed the nation through the State of the Union, his favorability ratings went up. I don't understand why he does not do like Reagan did or Obama and address the nation on a monthly basis.
I don't think Reagan did. Obama went longer without press conferences than most presidents. Obama didn't need to address the American people. The surrogates of his administration were the media, and they were getting the word out. Reagan, in fact, in Reagan's second term, he practically was invisible after the Iran-Contra thing happened. Now, Trump is addressing the American people. That's why I wanted to accept your call, because Trump is every day addressing the American people via Twitter.
Yeah, but don't you think it'd be more effective if he sat down calmly and humbly mentioned the things that he's accomplished and then calmly addressed the lies that are being spewed out there? I think Trump supporters like myself would love to see that because we're frustrated. And I know he does the Twitter, but if he addresses the nation, he's very impressive when he does that.
All right. It could work. I don't know. But I'm going to tell you what would happen. And you tell me if you can give me your honest reaction to this and not just your full-fledged, gee, you want Trump to succeed reaction. Just imagine that he calls a national address tonight, tomorrow night, to address all this stuff. It goes out and lists the accomplishments, the achievements, the economic growth, the things on the agenda that are ready to happen, things that have happened, and then starts addressing all of this stuff. And when he finishes, the media is going to ignore everything you want him to say that he may have in fact have said, and they're going to portray a president scared and frightened and on the defensive, feeling he is losing his base, had to call a national address to the nation to try to save his presidency, and then every cable network would have a series of roundtable discussions with so-called experts to come in and do psychological and political analysis of if Trump is losing it. Because the one thing you're never going to get here, Ken, no matter what, Tom, you're never going to get anybody in the drive-by media supporting, amplifying, or ignoring the positive things you want Trump to say. They are going to immediately set out to destroy them.
Yes, but they have to cover his address to the nation. And I think people are waiting to hear that. Obviously, all Trump supporters know what the media is doing. But I really believe that if he addresses the nation, okay, he will have a major effect on his base and other people that really don't know what's going on.
Do you like these tweets where he, how about his commencement speech? Yeah, he did a speech yesterday to the Coast Guard, and a lot of it was really good. But then he swerved into an area where he described himself as among the most unfairly victimized and criticized presidents ever. And I don't know if he was trying to evoke sympathy or what have you, but do you think it works when he does that?
For his base, it does, yeah. And the people that don't like Trump, I don't care what he says. They're not going to like him. But there are a lot of people in the middle of this country that go, well, is he being treated unfairly? What's going on here? And they're the people that I think if he addresses the nation, he's going to say, wow, this guy's not too bad, and maybe they are creating lies about him. I really believe that.
His supporters ought to know that and never doubt it from the campaign.
People that are undecided.
Okay, let me ask you another question.
Yeah.
Do you think in doing any of this that Trump can stop the independent counsel investigation? Do you think Trump could have prevented it?
No, but I think he can explain it, and I think he can explain what happened on May 3rd with Comey calmly to the nation, because people don't know that. 80% of the country have no idea that he did that Comey said that on May 3rd. He can mention that. I just think he should do it.
See, this goes back to the previous caller who wanted to know how you did. This is not something for Trump to do, in all candor. This is for surrogates to do. And this is why it's important to have a communication staff that can get the word out and do this kind of. Now, Trump may be different. I mean, it may well be that this is the kind of thing he can do himself or other presidents couldn't and get away with it. But it is it is still taking him away from the primary thing I think he needs to be doing to fight this. And I'm going to tell you what that is. I think now, folks, there is a golden opportunity. I don't know how big an opportunity, but it's an opportunity. It's an opening. Since they've announced this stupid special counsel investigation, just head full speed down the road of the domestic agenda. Let's get going on repealing Obamacare and use the force of Trump's personality and his victory to get Republicans in Congress signed up and doing this. Ditto on tax reform. The one thing that's going to provide Trump some insurance here is actually making America great again, is actually improving the circumstances. It's going to be hard because the Republicans don't want to do. The Republicans are scared to death. This council's, oh no, they're afraid they're going to go down with the boat. Afraid they're going to go down with the ship. But it's time for Trump to marshal every bit of these special powers he has as a negotiator, as a leader. And if he's going to make a speech about anything, it ought to be about this, about how he is dedicated, rededicated, whatever, to the agenda on which he ran, and that we have got to continue working hard as we can, doing everything we can to move forward on repealing Obamacare, on dealing with illegal immigration and making the circumstances even better, moving on to tax reform. Believe me, that is, I think, the single best thing that he could do. Get focused on it, get back focused on it, stay focused on it, and do everything he can, and make it appear like if it doesn't happen, it's not his fault. It's everybody else in his party and elsewhere which is not willing to join and help him. But if he's seen doubling down on this rather than being occupied by all of these distractions and investigations and Comey here and there, get back to why he was elected. And be seen as much as he can every day working on that. And make speeches about that. Address the nation with what, don't tell the nation that he's a victim and to feel sorry for him because of all this. Instead, cast it as people trying to stop him from completing his agenda for the American people. Make it known that what's going on here stands in the way of the betterment of life for the American people. Let it be known here that this is as much about denying the American people improved economic standards, standards of living, and the Trump agenda as he can. And that's the way to get the people behind him. Much better than trying to rally them to his cause via sympathy and how unfortunate, how unfair it is he's being investigated. He is still president of the United States. He is going to be president of the United States for the longest time. Send a signal every day he's not cowering in fear. Send a signal every day he's not going to resign. It's not in his vocabulary. Send a signal every day he hasn't done diddly squat, and this is typical that he expected this. This is the last dying gasp for the establishment, trying to destroy everything he stands for and you, the American people, and get moving as fast as he can on continuing to implement his agenda. Turn the tables on these people and make them feel depressed. Make them feel. The best way to do that is for Trump to double down on the agenda and get going on it, and to make it look like all of this is having no effect on him whatsoever. Now, they're not going to go away. They're never going to go away. They're never going to stop getting rid of Trump. He may as well take advantage of his position and use the extraordinary powers he has as an influencer, as a negotiator, to start or to keep the country moving in the positive direction that it is moving since he became president. And let that speak for itself. He doesn't have to go out and give speeches about, he can do it, about what he's done. That's not a bad thing to do. It's just a reminder because you may not be hearing about this. But he can't do a steady diet of it. The speeches have to be, the addresses to the country, as his public appearances, have to be focused on what he is doing and is going to continue to do. Not what he has done, but what lies ahead and how he needs people with him and nothing can stop him and blah, blah, blah. Rally the troops. That's what I would do. But, of course, I'm not there. And it's easy to say this stuff when you're not there. But, nevertheless, I appreciate your call. Quick timeout. We'll be back. We'll continue in a moment. Rush Limbaugh meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. Christy in Fort Lauderdale, great to have you on the program. Hello.
Rush, this is the biggest honor of my life.
And
I am on a road. Oh, well, I'm on a road trip with my family, my father and mother, and my 9 and 10-year-old, and I'm afraid all of them are going to try to grab the phone from me because the girls love Rush Revere so much, and my parents are such proud supporters of yours, and we all just love you.
Where are you headed?
We're headed to Ponte Vedra between Jacksonville and St. Augustine.
Oh, yes. They just had the Players' Championship up there. Exactly right.
Yes, they did. The reason I'm calling in is I happened to hear President Trump's speech to the Coast Guard, his commencement speech, and something he said stopped me in my tracks. He said to these graduates, you have the greatest gift because upon graduating, you know exactly what you're doing with your life, and you have a job. And it's public service. You're protecting the United States of America. And I get choked up even thinking about what he said. And I think of these millennials and these other commencement speeches I've seen clips of where they're running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Socialism is the greatest thing on earth. And they have no focus. And God rest his soul, your dear friend said something in something you played back about an hour ago. Libs, they don't know where they came from, and they don't know where they're going. And he summed up perfectly, I think, what I was trying to point out to you today. And the gentleman who called before, who said he wished that Trump would come out once a month with some sort of address to the nation, I think he achieved that during his speech. Do you, Rush?
Well, yeah, except that you don't know how many people heard it. It was a daytime speech. Fox, I think, carried a lot of it, CNN excerpts. None of it appeared in primetime, so you'd have to see it somewhere on social media, which, by the way, I'm evolving a theory on social media. I'll share with you, so it's not relevant now. Bottom line is, I don't think that it is widespread and powerful as everybody thinks. I think we're being kind of scammed by it in a way, simply by virtue of my own experiences with it. I don't know how many real people are in social media versus how many bots, how many things circulating there are actually created by robots and not real people. And I think all this is being run and sponsored by leftist organizations, from Google to Facebook to retired college professors to whatever. And it's also being used to dispirit people like you. You go to, no matter where you go on social media, you're outnumbered, right?
I don't even go on it anymore because of that.
Exactly. And I'm telling you, I think a lot of it, I don't know what percentage, is fake, phony, made up, and doesn't actually represent the opinions of real human beings. Like a lot of it's botnets. But anyway, that's where this speech would have to be seen.
Okay.
I agree with you that it was a great speech and inspiring and so forth. No question about it.
I have to say my 2 little girls' names, or they're going to never forgive me. And Madden and Ryan, they love your books so much. We read them every night, and they were a gift from my mom and dad. And you are such an inspiration to me. I'm in my 40s, and hopefully this generation that I'm raising, 2 little Americans, proud Americans.
How old
you're
are
helping
they?
pave the way. 9 and 10.
9 and 10. Well, I mean, right there, right in the crosshairs of the demo that we're seeking.
I know, and it's a scary time for them, and I worry about their future in this country. But thank God, your voice is so strong and so loud.
When are you going to be back home? When are you going to be back home?
On Sunday.
Sunday. And is home Fort Lauderdale or somewhere else?
Fort Lauderdale, yes.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, you hang on, because we've got a whole little package of goodies that we send to young people who love the characters in Rush Revere, the time travel adventures with exceptional Americans, including Liberty dolls. They're really cool things, and a whole bunch of stuff. Have they read all the books?
Yes, they have. My father's made sure of that.
Okay, cool. Well, we may send some audio versions so I can relive them in another way. So don't hang up so we can get your address. in Fort Lauderdale. So we have the stuff there after you get back home from wherever your road trip's taking you beyond Ponte Vedra. But I thank you very much, Christy, very much. I mentioned this yesterday. I said I didn't have time to do it, and I might try to make time today, either today or tomorrow. The thing by Penelope Trunk, the commencement speech that she gives, as opposed to the garbage that college graduates today hear. And the reason this appeals to me, because it's right up my alley. You know, I used to do a commencement speech every year here on the radio, and its focus was to take every premise of your standard boilerplate cliched commencement address, such as you are the future of our country. The weight of the world is on your shoulders. The world is waiting for you to make your mark. Because none of that's true. The world is not waiting for you. The weight of the world is not yet on your shoulders. And you haven't done anything to distinguish yourself yet. And you have, especially graduates today, have no idea what they are entering. They have no idea because they are not being prepared for it at all. They think because they've been in college where everything is devoted to, in a socialistic ritual, equality, fairness, and sustainability, and they think the world is this. Or if it isn't, that they are social justice warriors who can fix it simply by showing up and demanding it. They haven't the slightest idea the world they are soon to enter. And this piece by Penelope Trunk, it's intriguing in that regard. So I'll take a look at all the stuff I have here and make editorial decisions in terms of the importance of various items, decide whether to get to it. I've got a piece here at salon.com that is literally hilarious, but to them it's scary. They're scared to death writing this. It's about a new conservative fundraising group and the threat being posed by another conservative fundraising group. I'm now told that Penelope Trunk does not do commencement speeches. This stuff just on her blog. So, if you're looking for speeches, searches, it's not speeches, it's blog posts. At any rate, I'll take a brief break here at the top of the hour, and we resume with much more here at the Excellence in Broadcasting Network right after this. welcome back. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh here at the Golden EIB Network and the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Leftist Studies. Telephone number 800-282-2882. The email address lrushbaugh@eibnet.us. So, I have to admit I'm somewhat distracted today, folks. I'm doing my best to stay focused here. Somewhat distracted. So I just got an email. You wouldn't believe how many people are little helpers out there. You won't believe what just happened on CNN. You won't believe what just happened on Fox. You won't believe it. I'm going to have to shut the email down. Otherwise, I'm going to get overloaded. There's not a single person, even as well as I multitask, there isn't a single person that can keep up with all this. But one of the things that I did see, oh no, Rush, oh no, CNN says there's 18 contacts between the Trump administration and Russia. Oh no, is it over? So I said, okay, what's this? Not being one to panic. No need to panic, so I went out there. And it's a Reuters story. Exclusive. Trump campaign had at least 18 undisclosed contacts with Russia. Sources. And here's how the story begins. And it's by, have you noticed the number of people the drive-bys are assigning to every story? New York Times sometimes assign 4 people to a 500-word story. 3 people here, 2 people over there, mountains of people being assigned. In this case, 3 people, Ned Parker, Jonathan Land, and Warren Strobel, writing exclusively for Reuters. Michael Flynn and other advisors to Donald Trump's campaign were in contact with Russian officials and others with Kremlin ties in at least 18 calls and emails during the last 7 months of the 2016 presidential race, say current and former U.S. officials familiar with the exchanges. It's yet another group of unknown, unseen, anonymous current and former officials. The previously undisclosed interactions, like these 18, they're brand new, folks. Nobody knew about them till we at Reuters ferreted them out. The previously undisclosed interactions form part of the record now, being reviewed by the FBI and congressional investigators probing Russian interference in the U.S. presidential election and contacts between Trump's campaign and Russia. So, again, we have an article presented without evidence and which is based entirely on anonymous sources. The only surprise being that it wasn't leaked to the New York Times or Washington Post, but I guess the deep state's getting guilty. You know, we're giving so much to the Post and the Times. We got to spread it out. So they decided to give some of this anonymous crap to Reuters. Maybe since so much of the anonymously sourced articles have turned out to be fake, you realize how much of this is made up and fake and has been proven to be fake? Conversations between Flynn and Kislyak accelerated after the November 8th vote as the two discussed establishing a back channel for communications between Trump and Putin that could bypass the U.S. national security bureaucracy, which both sides considered hostile to improved relations. This, according to 4 current U.S. officials. The people who described the contacts to Reuters said that they had seen no evidence of wrongdoing or collusion between the campaign and Russia in the communications review. What? 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 Let me read this again. Conversations between Flynn and Kislyak, that's the Russian ambassador, accelerated after the November 8th election, which Trump won, as Flynn and the Russian ambassador discussed establishing a back channel so Trump and Putin could talk to each other, so as to hide their conversations from anybody else, particularly the intelligence community. That's the assertion, that Flynn was working with the Russian ambassador to set up a red line, a red phone for only Trump and only Putin to chat on, so the intel community could not monitor it, would not know it, national security apparatus would be totally unaware. The people who described the contacts between Flynn and Kislyak to Reuters said they had seen no evidence of wrongdoing or collusion between the campaign and Russia in the communications reviewed so far. Well, then, what is the story? What if the people described the contacts to Reuters said they've seen no evidence of wrongdoing or collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia in the communication? That's like every other story. No evidence. They tell you all these allegations, all these possibilities, all these suppositions. And in every story, there's always this little line. So far, no evidence has been confirmed to confirm the charges. So now Reuters is engaging in fake news. This, I don't know what it, media malpractice or what. But if you drill down into the article, you discover the sentence that I just shared with you. Conversations between Flynn and Kislyak accelerated after the vote. So we're supposed to be outraged that the Trump transition team would be in contact with the Russian government. There's nothing unusual about that. And yet this headline, CNN, Reuters, 18 contacts, 18 conversations between the Russians, and of course there were. It's what happens in transitions. But it's being portrayed here as sinister and sly. And plus, are we to believe also, have you ever heard of the red phone? You know, back in the Cold War days, there was an Oval Office phone, and you picked it up, and it only connected with the Soviet leader in the Kremlin. This isn't even new. But they're trying to make it look like Trump and Putin, man, they're blood brothers. Trump and Putin, they ran a scam here. Trump and Putin want to be able to talk and do whatever without the media or anybody else being able to overhear, as though standard operating procedure is the media does get to listen to Trump call Putin. I mean, all of this is flat out absurd. Trump campaign, at least 18 undisclosed content. Just means you didn't know about it when they happened. It doesn't mean they were trying to keep you from learning about it. It's a transition. And then the killer, the people who described the contacts to Reuters, said they had seen no evidence of wrongdoing or collusion. Well, then what's the story? The 18 undisclosed contacts? But I'll tell you how this works, because the people that sent me this on CNN, they get another nail in the coffin. Oh, my God, Rush. Oh, no. And it's right before Trump's press conference at 3:45. Oh, no. There's no news here. Literally is no news. Snerdley, have you heard about the joke that they overheard Kevin McCarthy telling, and they're now trying to... You don't think it was a joke? You don't think it was a joke? You think Kevin McCarthy really thought that Putin was paying Trump? So you think that a Republican congressional leader really thought Putin and Trump were in bed with each other? Do you think Trump and Putin are in bed with each other? No. So you think this is a Republican establishment putting the screws to Trump? Wow. Well, here's the story on this. This is from Breitbart. The headline, Media Hysteria. Washington Post treats Kevin McCarthy joke as proof of Trump-Russia link. So, the Washington Post has released the latest salvo in the media's effort to take down Trump today. That was actually yesterday. A joke made last year by the House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Republican California, suggesting that Vladimir Putin pays Trump. The joke occurred during a private conversation involving the House Republican leadership. The conversation was recorded. Aren't they all now? The exchange, from the transcript below, since the Post has not made the audio available, is as follows. McCarthy: yeah, the Russians hacked the DNC And they got the Oppo research that they had on Trump. McCarthy laughs. Paul Ryan says, the Russians hacked the DNC. McHenry says, yeah, they get Oppo. Ryan says, on Trump? And like delivered it to who? And it's unintelligible. McCarthy says, there's two people, I think, that Putin pays. I think he pays Rohrabacher. I think he pays Trump. Everybody starts laughing. McCarthy says, swear to God, swear to God. Ryan says, this is an off-the-record, no-leaks event, right? Right? And they're all laughing nervously. And then Ryan is overheard saying on the tape, this is how we know we are a real family here. The full context of the conversation is unclear, but the House leadership appeared to be discussing the crisis in Ukraine and Russian efforts to spread disinformation there. The apparent target of the joke is Dana Rohrabacher, Republican California, who the Post describes uncharitably as a fervent defender of Putin and Russia. The Washington Post's Adam Entis does not explain why he did not post the audio of the conversation, but the laughter on the audio would underline the fact that McCarthy's comments were intended to be humorous because he's laughing about them. Though it is obvious from the transcript, it says here, that the remark is a joke, the Washington Post treats it as a serious scoop, claiming in the first paragraph that McCarthy made a politically explosive assertion in a private conversation on Capitol Hill with his fellow GOP leaders. Look, there's one thing that's not undeniable. These people on the left do not get satire. They do not get parody. They have no sense of humor whatsoever, especially when it's directed at them. Now, Putin paying Trump. When did this happen? This happened last year. So, and it's before the election. And the news is all over. The Democrats have been trying to establish this connection with Trump and Russia for, well, it's over a year now, and there hasn't been any evidence for it. So these guys get together in the Republican leadership in the House. They're joking around. And they're primarily talking about Rohrabacher and then McCarthy. I think there are two people Putin pays. I think he pays Rohrabacher, I think he pays Trump. Ho, 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 ho. Now, interestingly, Mr. Snerdley doesn't think this is a joke. Yeah. Well, look, nobody's going to ask, by the way, what the hell is the Washington Post doing with the tape? How did they get the tape? Nobody's going to ask that. Look, this is a private conversation involving the Republican House leadership. How'd the Post get the tape? Who gave it to them? Did somebody in the House leadership give them the tape? How else are they going to get it? Remember how that old aging couple driving around in their Cadillac in North Florida, they just happened to have a radio in their car that scans cell phone signals. This old couple, they loved listening to cell phone calls. So they went out and got a special radio with cell phone signals, and by quirk of fate, they overheard Newt Gingrich when he was Speaker of the House talking to somebody. And they thought, this is historic. So, you know what they did? They gave the tape to, I think it was Chuck Schumer, or a current leader in the Democrat House of Representatives. Oh, that's right. They gave it to Jim Baghdad McDermott. They get Jim McDermott. So this couple, they were apparently out Christmas shopping in the Cadillac, family Cadillac, and they're scanning cell phone calls on their radio there on the dashboard of the Cadillac. Had a tape recorder. Oh, yeah, they had a tape recorder. Just a hobby, just a couple that was, you would never, they're just an old couple driving around trying to enjoy their last days. And they got this cell phone device, and they got a recorder. So they record Mr. Newt in strategy session with somebody. Might have been Boehner. And they thought, you know what, this might be historic. We've got the Speaker of the House here. So they gave the tape to the Democrat leaders in the House, and they gave it to the Washington Post. And the conversation between Mr. Newt and whoever at the Republican leadership got published. And here we are again, another Republican leadership tape ends up being recorded and given to the Washington Post. So how do you think that happened? I don't know. We know that people in the media are lazy. They sit around and wait for people to give them things. And, I think people are loving becoming sources, too, especially if they're anonymous. If you could imagine this. Imagine you are able to call a reporter and establish a relationship, and this reporter will protect your identity, even go to jail before revealing your identity. Wouldn't it be fun to tell that guy anything? If you could leak anything, you could tell a reporter anything and never have your name attached to it? And I think this is what's happening. I think people are loving being sources. They love being unnamed former and current U.S. government officials. Somebody in the Republican leadership had to give the Post that tape. This mythical contact between the Trump transition team and the Russians, and there's nothing illegal about it, which Reuters has to admit after 2 or 3 paragraphs of drama. By the way, new presidents, new administrations have conversations with foreign governments. It's standard operating procedure. Reuters, 18 previously undisclosed. People have forgotten. You know what? It may not be that people have forgotten. It may well be that most people never even knew. Are you aware of all of the back channel conversations Obama had with real enemies of this country? Iran, for one. I have here a piece of John Hindrocker at Powerline from the 15th of February this year. In 2008, while he was running for the presidency, Barack Hussein O. deliberately undermined American foreign policy by secretly encouraging the mullahs in Iran to hold out until he became president because he would be easier to deal with than George W. Bush. There was even a blog post written called How Barack Obama Undercut Bush Administration's Nuclear Negotiations with Iran. Obama's not even elected, and he is undermining American foreign policy, secretly encouraging Iran's mullahs to hold out to suspend any talks until Obama becomes elected. This is like Obama talking to Dmitry Medvedev in 2012 somewhere. There's an open mic. Obama's coming up in re-election in 2012, and he says to Dmitry Medvedev, tell Vlad to be patient. I'll have more flexibility after I win re-election. They were talking about the American nuclear arsenal and Obama's expressed desire to reduce it. In 2008, the Bush administration, along with 6 other nations, 6 powers, was negotiating with Iran concerning their nuclear arms program. This all didn't start with Obama, by the way. Obama, the media wants you to think Obama got elected, then we got serious talking to Iran. No, it was all going on before Obama even got elected. Now, the objective of the Bush administration in 2008 was to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. On July 20th of 2008, the New York Times ran a story with the headline, Nuclear Talks with Iran End in a Deadlock. What caused the talks to break off? Here's what the Times said. Iran responded with a written document that failed to address the main issue, international demands that it stop enriching uranium. And Iranian diplomats reiterated before the talks that they considered the issue non-negotiable. The Iranians held firm to this position because they knew that help was on the way. They knew that Obama was probably going to get elected. And if Obama got elected, they were going to be much less controlled. They'd have many more options. So they just stalled negotiations. Which, if you're the Iranians, why you don't blame them. You know Bush is leaving. Bush is the hardliners. Bush doesn't want you to get nuclear weapons. The incoming guy might be sympathetic. So you freeze negotiations till Obama gets in. And you do that based on Obama's assurances as a candidate. This is obscene. This is this AT in Dallas great to have you. I'm glad you waited, sir.
Well, thank you, Rush. Hello.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a woman. It didn't.
Oh, yes. We have initials, too. We know that Comey usurped the authority of the Department of Justice, and there were many other irregularities in how he handled the Clinton server scandal, enough to get him fired. Doesn't this justify reopening the Clinton investigation and perhaps appointing a special counselor with a broad assignment?
See, when this happened, yes, as I say, I have been somewhat distracted the past 2 or 3 days, so I didn't know this happened until like 2 hours afterward, until I got home. So I saw this, and my initial reaction was, I was muttering obscenities. I was mad about it. I said, who the hell caved on our side? What the hell? I'm going through all these emotions. They lost the freaking election. Why are we giving them what they want? Going through all that. And I said, okay, what's this cover? And I looked at it, and it's only Trump and Russia. There's nothing about the Clintons. There's nothing about their illegal server. There's nothing about any of their violations. And I said, what in the name of Sam Hillary? Why don't we just commit suicide? Why don't we just point the gun at ourselves and be done with this? That was my initial reaction to this. Now, to the extent that it depends on what the investigation turns up, but no, this council's not going to be looking into any of that. That would be another one. And who do you think?
Wouldn't they be justified in opening another one? I mean, they've made the case for...
They'd be more justified in opening that than this one. Absolutely right.
And whatever they discovered about Trump and Russia would pale by comparison to what we know they'd be finding out about Hillary and all the Clinton baggage.
Just the trafficking in classified data alone on that server, which we've already been told she did. The only reason she wasn't prosecuted was Comey said she didn't mean to, which is not even part of the statute.
He usurped the authority. I mean, he didn't have the authority to even make that call.
Why don't we get a special counsel on that Loretta Lynch letting Slick Willie on the airplane? I mean, the stuff that's happened here that the Democrats engage in, and there's never any call for any investigation, much less special or otherwise. I'll tell you what would happen here, A.T. Let's say that somehow, some way, a special counsel was appointed to look into Hillary's illegal email server and traffic. Can you imagine the media reaction to that? This is just sour grapes. This is obviously to cover up the obvious crimes Trump has committed. Media would just... It isn't going to happen. It isn't going to... It's ex post facto now. Well, it isn't, but politically it is. So all of this stuff has to have political pretexts. And since there's nobody in Congress demanding a special counsel for the Clintons... Nobody demanding any of that. It's not going to happen. So I'm glad you called, A.T. I appreciate your patience in waiting. This is Joe in Evansville, Indiana. You're next, and it's great to have you here, sir.
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Just fine.
Since 1993. What I called about was Republicans can never learn. They keep thinking if we agree with them, they will like us. The media will like us. Well, I've got a newsflash for you. They'll never like you, and they don't respect you. If they were to stand up on the State House, on the Capitol steps and say, Trump is our president, and we're going to make this country great again, you can either join us, and this is a grave invitation to the Democrats. You can join us in making our country great again, or you can lead, you can follow, or you can get out of the way. But this distraction with Trump and all these unfounded rumors, just like if the Democrats were doing this, that's what they would say. They would lie, obfuscate, and never give a moment's notice or credence to these, if they had a Democrat in the White House, never give a moment's notice to them. They would just let it slide off the back. But the Republicans are trying so hard to get everybody to like them.
Well, let me ask you, how much of this, in this instance, do you think that is a factor?
How much what?
Well, the Republicans not standing in the way of the special counsel, the Republicans starting to whisper impeachment, the Republicans slowly, softly accepting it. McCain is the Republican ringleader here, and he's not afraid of the media.
And Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham's another one. You know that you can't stick a microphone in front of
Right,
Lindsey
but they're
Graham
not
before.
doing it. My point, they're not doing it in this instance. I agree with you that on balance they're quivering and cowering in the corner against the media, but not in this. They're not afraid of the media. That's not why they're not supporting Trump here. This is establishment versus outsider, man.
I understand that.
This is McCain. You want to call me a coward for getting caught, Trump? Right? Well, let's see who's standing here in a couple of years. That's what's going on here.
Well, every time I see a Republican on TV saying, yes, we need to get to the bottom of this Russia thing, I'm thinking, the bottom of what? There's nothing there.
Exactly.
Why are you saying that?
Exactly right.
I mean, couldn't they just possibly say, you've had a year, you just got through saying this a few minutes ago yourself, you've had a year and you have no evidence, so we're going to move on to the people's business.
They may be currying for the media there, but I think largely it's they're trying to stay on good side of donors and media secondarily. In this particular instance, in this Trump instance, this is clearly insider versus outsider, establishment versus interloper, however you want to describe it. All of this should have been, I know it's easy to sit here with 20/20 hindsight and Monday morning quarterback and all that, but this was so predictable that all of this was going to happen. It was so predictable. And the point of that is, if it was predictable, it could have been defensible. I will tell you something. It was February, and I found myself at Mar-a-Lago. I'd been invited over to Mar-a-Lago. And I was talking to some people over there. And I said, you guys surprised by all this outrage? Yes, we are. I said, you are? Yes, we are. What were you expecting? Well, we were expecting a lot more unity a month after the inauguration. Are you kidding me? No. We thought after they got it out of their system that there'd be a little bit more. I was dumbfounded. I was flabbergasted. I probably let the cat out of the bag here. I should. Here's Craig in Southern Ontario. Welcome, sir. Great to have you with us.
Great to be here. Thanks, Rush.
You bet, sir.
I wonder if you've had this same notion. I see this hunt for Russian collusion ending only one of two possible ways. A, they find some kind of collusion. I find it far-fetched. B, in the absence of evidence, they're going to sit and have panel after panel for months talking about how was it possible that they were able to eliminate and expunge and disappear all of this information.
You've got it. You've nailed it. In the first place, the whole premise is absurd. What are we talking about? We're talking about the ongoing effort to convince the American people that Hillary should have won. That's what they're trying to do here. That Hillary should have won. The election was stolen from her because of connections that Trump had with Putin. That means that the Russians somehow were able to rig the election in favor of Trump. That is not possible. There is no evidence for it, and that specifically has not even been alleged. They are leaving it up to people to conclude that's what they're talking about. They're using the power of suggestion. They might find a phone call or two. They won't find any evidence that our election was anything other than 100% legitimate.
Well, I think I've heard them already setting this up. I heard a little tiny sound bite, and I don't remember if it was Barbara Boxer or Pelosi or one of the other members of the Brain Trust, but they said, well, absence of evidence is no indication that a crime wasn't committed. And then I went, oh, here we go. We're going to have to listen to this for months after, if it ever closes. We'll have to listen to it for months or years.
If they find any evidence, it's going to be there isn't any. They've been looking for a year. There isn't any. I don't even want to discuss if they're going to find. If they find some,
I don't either.
If they find some, I'm not going to believe it. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to believe it. If they don't find some, the other side's going to say they don't believe it. And the media, not the Democrats, are going to, as you say, impanel endless roundtables on TV to discuss how the once great Bob Mueller ended up being corrupted by Donald Trump. That'll be number one. Number two, how did they miss it? With all the leaks, the Post and the Times, how did they miss it? They're not going to accept this. And it doesn't matter. The media is going to continue to premise that Trump cheated, that Hillary should be the president, no matter what happens with this investigation. That's why I think it's a waste of time. So somebody said, what do you think of Joe Lieberman as the FBI director? Well, why not? Let's go find another Democrat to put up there in the Trump administration or close by. Yeah, by all means, let's make sure we satisfy every Democrat request and complaint they've got. Yes, sir, Reba. Bring on any Democrat you want as far as I'm concerned. What?